this episode, I want to talk about a supplement that on paper should be a really hard sell. It's freeze-dried beef organs in a capsule: liver, kidney, heart, and even bovine uterus and ovary. For women. Think about how strange that is for a second. Okay, after the Liver King, maybe it's not all that strange to you and me. We're supplement nerds, but most big supplement brand marketers would look at that product and at first look say there's no way that scales. And they'd be wrong. The brand is Primal Queen, is doing millions of dollars a month selling exactly that. Beef organs for women. So the question I want to answer today is, how does a product that sounds that off-putting to a modern buyer become a fast-scaling brand? And the answer is going to teach you something that most supplement marketers never figure out. Because here's my whole thesis on supplement marketing. People don't buy supplements the way they buy other products. And nowhere is that more obvious than with a brand like Primal Queen, where the product itself gives you almost no reason to buy on the surface, and yet women are buying it on subscription and staying. There's a force underneath that, and it's the most powerful of the four. It's belief. But before we get started, just a reminder, this is part 3 of a series called The Next Wave, where we're breaking down the supplement brands scaling right now and what they're doing differently. In part 1, I laid out the shift from format to positioning. In part 2, we took apart array and the art of sharp positioning. Today, it's Primal Queen and the single most underrated move in supplement marketing, which is riding a belief you didn't have to build. You don't need the earlier episodes to follow this one, but they connect. Okay, let's get to it. Welcome to Health Business Mastery, the Creative Thirst podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Hewitt. So let me start with the thing that makes Primal Queen such a good teacher, which is how much resistance the product should face and doesn't. Think about what you're asking a buyer to do here. You're asking a woman in 2026 who's been marketed clean, plant-based, science-forward wellness for a decade to swallow capsules of freeze-dried cow organs, liver, kidney, heart, and reproductive organs. If you just showed that product to a focus group, cold, with no context, most people would wrinkle their nose. It sounds primitive. It sounds a little gross. It sounds like the opposite of everything modern wellness has been selling. And yet it's working. So what's going on? The answer is that Primal Queen isn't selling into a vacuum. They're selling into a belief system that already exists and is already growing fast. The ancestral nutrition movement. The whole idea that our ancestors ate this way, that organ meats were prized for thousands of years, that modern diets stripped out these nutrient-dense foods, and that going back to how humans used to eat is the path to feeling better. That belief was already out there. It was already spreading through the carnivore diet crowd, the ancestral health world, the raw milk and regenerative farming conversation, the whole back to our roots wellness movement that's been building for years. Primal Queen didn't create that belief. They didn't have to. They just built a product that lets a specific group of people who already hold that belief act on it easily. And that is the whole lesson of this episode. So let me say it plainly. The hardest and most expensive thing you can try to do in supplement marketing is change what somebody believes. The easiest and most profitable thing you can do is find a belief people already hold and give them a product that fits it perfectly. Primal Queen is a masterclass in the second one. Now let me connect this to my framework, because belief is one of the 4 supplement buying forces, and it's the one with the most emotional energy attached to it. The 4 forces, if you're new here, are desire, hope, trust, and belief. And I've said for years that belief is different from the other 3 because you can't argue your way into it. There's an enormous amount of pulling force behind what someone already believes. You try to fight it, you lose. You align with it, you win. Most supplement brands get this exactly backwards. They pick a product and then they try to convince the market to believe in it. They spend enormous amounts of money educating the market, trying to get people to believe in an ingredient or a mechanism they've never heard of. And that's brutal because you're paying to change beliefs, which is the most expensive marketing there is. It's slow, it's costly, and most of the time it just doesn't take. Primal Queen flipped it. They didn't pick a product and go hunting for believers. They found a belief that already had momentum, ancestral nutrition, and they built the product for the people who already believed it. When you do it that direction, your marketing stops being about convincing and starts being about confirming. You're not fighting the buyer's beliefs. You're handing them the thing they already wanted to say yes to. That's a completely different and much cheaper motion. And this is a really important idea for the founders listening because it speaks directly to one of the biggest pains in this business, which is the cost of educating the market. So many supplement brands are stuck spending money to teach people why they should even want the product before they can sell it. That's a killer. It drives up your cost to acquire a customer. It slows everything down, and it's the kind of spend that never seems to end. When you position into an existing belief instead, the education has already happened. The movement did it for you. You get to skip the most expensive part of the funnel. So the strategic question isn't, how do I convince people to believe in my product? The strategic question is, what does my target buyer already believe? And how do I build or position a product that fits neatly inside that belief? That reframe alone is worth the price of admission on this episode because it changes where you point your energy. Okay, so let's go deeper on exactly how Primal Queen executes this because there's real craft here beyond just picking the right trend. The first thing they do is they wrap the belief in an identity. Look at the name, Primal Queen. Primal ties directly into the ancestral belief. Queen is the identity. And they talk about their customers as an army of queens who've taken back their health. That's not a customer base. That's a movement, or at least it's framed like one. When you buy Primal Queen, you're not just buying organ capsules. You're joining a tribe of women who believe a certain thing about health and about themselves. You're unleashing your inner queen. This matters because belief and identity are deeply connected. The strongest beliefs we hold are the ones tied to who we think we are. When a brand lets you express your belief through an identity, the belief gets stronger and the brand becomes part of how you see yourself. That's how you get the kind of retention Primal Queen seems to have, women staying on subscription month after month. Because canceling isn't just dropping a product, it's stepping away from an identity and a community you've bought into. The second thing they do is they use a mechanism that fits the belief perfectly, even though it's scientifically shaky. They lean on the old idea of supports like. The notion that eating uterus supports your uterus, eating ovary supports your ovaries, that consuming the organ nourishes the corresponding organ in your own body. Now, mainstream science does not really back that idea. But here's the thing, it doesn't matter for the sale because it fits the belief the buyer already holds so cleanly. If you already believe ancestral wisdom beats modern medicine, then supports sounds intuitively true. It feels right. It matches the worldview. This is the unique mechanism doing its job, and I want to be careful how I say this. I'm not telling you to make up science. I'm pointing out that a mechanism's power in marketing comes from how well it fits the buyer's existing belief, not purely from how airtight the study behind it is. Primal Queen's supports mechanism gives the believer a reason, a story for why this works that slots perfectly into what they already think is true. That's what a mechanism of hope does. It gives belief something concrete to hold on to. The third thing they do, and this is the smart part, is they still bring real trust signals to back it all up. They talk about running a third-party, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial, which they claim makes them the only beef organ brand to do one. They talk about grass-fed, pasture-raised cattle from Argentina, single-origin sourcing, freeze-drying to preserve nutrients, third-party testing on every batch. So even though the core appeal is a belief and identity play, they layer credibility on top of it for the part of the buyer's mind that still wants proof. And that's the dual mind thing I always come back to. The supplement buyer is running two minds at once. The emotional mind, which here is all belief and identity and ancestral story, and the functional mind, which still wants to know, is this clean? Is this safe? Is there any proof? Primal Queen feeds both. The belief and the movement satisfy the emotional mind. The clinical trial and the sourcing satisfy the functional mind. Most brands only feed one and wonder why the sale doesn't close. Primal Queen feeds both, and that's a big part of why it converts. Now, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't talk about the risk here, because this belief riding strategy has a real downside you need to understand before you go chasing it. When you build your brand on a belief movement, you're tying your growth to the momentum of that movement. Right now, ancestral nutrition is rising. Primal Queen is riding a wave that's still building, and that's a huge tailwind. But movements crest and they fade. If ancestral nutrition peaks and starts to decline, the way a lot of diet trends eventually do, a brand built entirely on that belief has a problem because they don't own a broad position. They own a slice of a trend. We actually saw a version of this in the first series when we talked about how ingredient trends spike and then fall. Beliefs and movements can do the same thing. There's also a credibility risk. When you're writing a belief that runs ahead of the mainstream science, you attract critics, and Primal Queen has them. There are science writers who've gone after the brand pretty hard, calling out the appeal to nature thinking, questioning the health claims, pointing at the gap between what's promised and what's proven. That kind of scrutiny comes with the territory when your marketing leans on belief more than on consensus science. It doesn't necessarily stop the brand from growing because the believers aren't persuaded by the critics, but it's a real vulnerability, especially as you get bigger and regulators and journalists start paying attention. So the belief play is powerful, but it's not free. You're borrowing the momentum of a movement, which means you're also exposed to that movement's ceiling and to the backlash that comes when belief outruns proof. Go in with your eyes open on that. Okay, so let's make this practical for your brand, because most of you aren't selling beef organs, but every one of you can use this principle. The first thing to do is get crystal clear on what your target buyer already believes about health before they ever meet your brand. Not what you wish they believed, what they actually believe. Are they in the ancestral back to nature camp? Are they in the science and optimization, quantify everything camp? Are they in the clean and minimal, fewer ingredients camp? Are they in the functional medicine root cause camp? These are all real distinct belief systems with real momentum, and your buyer is almost certainly sitting inside one of them already. Once you know which belief system your buyer lives in, the next move is to make sure everything about your product and your positioning confirms that belief rather than fighting it. Your ingredients, your mechanism, your story, your language, your brand name, the identity you offer, all of it should feel to the buyer like, yes, this is for people like me who believe what I believe. When a buyer feels that, the sale gets dramatically easier. because you're not asking them to change their mind. You're rewarding them for what they already think. And here's the deeper strategic point. If you can find a belief that's still rising, still gaining momentum, and get in early with a product that fits it, you get a tailwind that does a lot of your marketing for you. That's what Primal Queen caught with ancestral nutrition. The movement is doing the education. The movement is creating the believers. Primal Queen just has to be the obvious product for a believer to reach for. Finding a rising belief and being early to it is one of the highest leverage moves in this entire business. But, and this is the balance, don't tie yourself so completely to one trend that you have nothing left if it fades. The smart version of this is to ride the belief for the growth and use that growth to build something more durable underneath it. A real relationship with your customer, a broader identity that can outlast the specific trend, product lines that can evolve as the movement evolves. You'll notice Primal Queen is already expanding beyond just organs into creatine, marrow, and appetite product. They're using the belief-driven momentum of the organ product to build a broader women's wellness brand that could survive even if the specific organ trend cools off. That's the move. Ride the wave in, but build a boat while you're on it. So let me bring this all the way back to why this matters differently for supplements than for anything else. In most product categories, belief isn't really in play. Nobody has a deep belief system about paper towels. But health is different. Health is one of the most belief-saturated areas of human life. People have profound identity-level beliefs about what makes them healthy, about nature versus science, about ancestral wisdom versus modern medicine, about their own bodies. And those beliefs drive supplement buying more than almost any other factor. That's why belief is one of the four forces, and it's why selling supplements is genuinely different from selling other products. When you understand that your buyer is walking in with a fully formed belief system, your whole job changes. You stop trying to convince and you start trying to confirm. You stop spending money to change minds and you start positioning to reward the minds people already have. Primal Queen understood that whether they'd put it in these words or not, and it turned a product that should have been a hard sell into a fast scaling brand. So here's what I want you to do after this episode. Write down in one sentence the core belief your best customers already hold about health. Then go read your own marketing and ask whether you're confirming that belief or quietly fighting it. Because if you're fighting it, that's your leak. And if you're confirming it, you want to turn that all the way up because that's the cheapest, most durable growth you've got. Next episode, we stay in the next wave and cross into a completely different lane. We're going to look at Mars Men, a male vitality brand that reportedly hit a $100 million revenue run rate in under 18 months. And it wins in a way that runs against almost everything the lifestyle and belief brands do. Sharper, harder, pure, direct response built on a high-intent problem. Most brands are too squeamish to touch. It's a different animal, and there's a lot to learn from it. I'll see you there. And look, if this episode got you thinking that you've been spending a fortune trying to change what your market believes instead of positioning into what they already believe, that's a fixable problem, and it's one of the most valuable things you can fix. If you'd rather have a team that lives and breathes supplement buying psychology work through it with you, that's exactly what we do at Creative Thirst. We specialize only in dietary supplements. We take on a small number of brands at a time, and we're selective about who we bring on. If that's where your brand is right now, you can apply to work with us at creativethirst.com.